Da da da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And oh my goodness, I stayed in today. I have been working on that reselling. Me and my sister have been working together for years now. It's how I pay for my trips every September. We are resellers. And, things are a little bit different. Ah, yeah, the aspects between those relations and the money grabs in the countries that are kind of button heads in the fair trade. And my sister with the tariffs, it's been like really smacking her silly a little bit. And it's made it really, really difficult for us to carry on doing that reselling and mailing items off to the states. And we came to a quite a bit of a standstill, right? It's been pretty wicked, and for my sister, it's been her livelihood. And I've only in the past, say, half a dozen years or so, have begun to partner up with her in these little enterprises and entrepreneurship and keeping that roof over my head. But this has been her livelihood, and she has been taking it pretty hard. Now she's moved a little bit over to marketplace, but the items, that she usually sells are not usually marketplace items. But because again, the world is changing, you know, for a lot of people, they're just not using eBay anymore. And it's unfortunate because not only the buyers are losing, right? Because they have to pay pretty much um, the same amount in tariffs as they do in their purchases, but also for the sellers who are getting their parcels refused at the post office because people are finding the tariffs are just outrageous, and she's not getting these items back. And on top of that, these shipping companies are taking advantage of that and charging and recharging and holding fees, and right, and she's been pretty frustrated in that. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, and we decided, well, we're going to give it a real shot on marketplace because people understand now that it's just not feasible to be working with eBay now because there's no profit margin, right? It's not fun anymore because we don't just do this because it puts the roof over our heads, even though it's the main reason. We do it because it's fun. It's what we're good at. It's what we enjoy, and we enjoy each other's company. It's part of those holding on to those important relationships in our lives, and common interests are an important aspect of that. It's part of how we can sometimes tolerate each other when one or the other is, or both, in a bad mood, to have that commonality where we can both apply ourselves and enjoy together as a team in that little partnership that we have, that right, we can find a little bit of compromise, right, in that adapt and conquer, which is so important. Like, none of my sisters give up, right? They're like pit bulls with a piece of raw meat in their mouth. And right, it's the way we were brought up. And sometimes it's just out of necessity, right? You get yourself out of that hole, or you sink, right? You go under. And we are too determined for that. So yesterday we talked about it, and we're going to give it a fair shot on Marketplace, because I think, that the people who are buying these kind of items are more open to the idea of just changing platforms. And it might even work out better for us, because everybody has a Facebook account, right? Not everybody has an eBay account. And if they're going to buy from the States, usually it's that, right? It's Amazon. And now that we have Amazon Canada, it's a little bit easier on the consumer here when they're making their purchases. But yeah, so we have been working at that. And today this is what I am doing. I've been listing, and we have to take care. It's not just like the algorithms on YouTube, right? That the quality of your content, the quality of your footage, right? The impact of your content. These are all things that regulate the algorithm. And it's the same kind of idea on Facebook and on Marketplace, right? So if you're consistently listing, then you're consistently showing to the buyer, and this is how you make sales, right? I hadn't been listing since Christmas. I kind of took a little bit of a break, and it's also in taking a pause to see exactly what I want to hold on to and what can go, and getting out there myself and doing a little bit of thrifting and finding stock to list. So this time it's a little bit different. I used to go off and we used to go shopping, and right, and my sister would do the rest of the work, all the listing and the shipping and stuff. And she's been very generous that way. And I'd go over once in a while and be a photographer on her listings and things. But for the most part, she did the heavy work. And I did the fun stuff by hanging out with her, right? Uh we kind of going to change that arrangement a little bit, because I have been working on Marketplace, out of necessity, right? But I've been enjoying it too. I really have. And so we are going to team up. And this time I'm going to do the listing. I'm going to take care of all of that. My sister is still working a full time job. She's trying to cut back her hours. She should cut back her hours, right? That it's important for us to enjoy our lives. And this way she would have more time. If she went part time, she could do part time in doing what we're doing now and make just as much money, possibly more. But then again, it's in each one of our choices. So if she's not feeling um, that compelling need to get on Marketplace, then that would be her choice, and I would just carry on the best that I can. I'm right. I have been getting into it lately, and I've been enjoying it. But as a team, me and her have been a really good team in reselling. And not only that, I love hanging out with my sister Alice. She is 6 years younger than me. So you can imagine, as I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends. And one of those friends that I did have was my sister Tracy, who was only a year younger than I was. So she was my friend, right? My other sisters were just way too young, unless I was babysitting them and entertaining them and stuff. But, for the most part, my friend was Tracy. As adults, those age gaps are not significant in any way, if they ever were. It's only in how we relate to each other. And that's what I'm going to say about that, right? Because there is, when you have an age difference, it's hard, right? Because somebody is much younger, you're in a totally different mindset from them. And so sometimes we don't connect that way until we are older. And I bet you for lots of people, it's same way, that they find that they're better friends with their siblings now than when they were with children, right? Or as children. So that's what I was doing today. I was working with my customers and working on listings, right? And answering messages, and actually really delving into exactly how we want to do this, how to make it succeed. It might not be forever, right? We all have goals, we all have dreams. I'm still working towards the main priorities of my ambitions, right? But in the meantime, I still got to put a roof over my head. I still want to hang out with my sisters. And it is, right in that line of entrepreneurship that I'm always yapping about, right? And it ties in to my story, right? The stories that I share, and each one of us, right? We're living in a world now that we're going to have to be creative. Hello, Eugene. Thank you so much. I'm doing really good. I hope you're doing good tonight too. I really do. So what was I going to say in that? Yeah, we live in a world now that we're going to have to start being creative because we are segregated in our wage brackets. Call it wage because it might not be a wage. It just might be investments and, luck, gifting, right? Partnerships that we attain our livelihoods. But even in that, we have to be creative, don't we? And yeah, I think that to be able to kind of find your way on your own, that if the whole world crashes, right? If we're not just going to be worrying about tariffs, that somehow, some way, we'll be okay, right? Like gardens in the backyard selling produce, right? Opening up your garage, right, to do mechanical work for the neighbors, or having your kids go out and shovel snow, that everybody contributes as that unit, right? We should all be creative and bring to the table what each one of us is capable of, right? You won't find me in the garage fixing cars or anything out of necessity. I wouldn't be opposed to learning that, but I don't think in just saying, okay, let's open up my garage and start working on cars, right? It's that word of mouth that gets around, that we get to learn where those resources and those tools are that will help us in the pursuit of whatever we want to do and whatever we need to do, right? Okay. So today, right, it was heavy because in those small moments in between phone calls and texting and listing and you know, I have been in the lessons, and lots of times I butt heads with a lot of the content that I come across, and I'm thinking, if I'm butting heads with this, if I don't look at this as a truth, right? Because I have to be willing to at least listen to perspectives, to ideas, to legitimate scientific, right, educational proven truths, that if I'm not willing to, that I feel that, right, I will be missing out, because again, it's in that adaptability, in that resilience, and anything that might help us along the way is something that we should pay attention to, right? Okay, let's have a sip of my juice. And I said, when I said garage, I went, "Oh my goodness, I know the Americans, they call garage something else, right?" uh, garage, right? Garage, you guys call it garage? Yeah, we call it garage here, but there are lots, right? Potatoes, tomatoes, right? It's all in that pronunciation, right? And those communities that we kind of break things up and slang and make them work for us and make them work for our accents, and then they end up sounding different, right? And as we change in each generation, we live this close in this digital age, that there's going to come a point that possibly accents, right? Unless we keep our mother tongues, but I suspect at one point English will be the language, right? You know, we here have two languages that we follow. We follow French and we follow English. They are the languages of our countries. I know in the States it's Spanish and English, but I think at some point we're going to get to the point where, right, we all speak English. And then maybe not for thousands of years or something, but accents will probably be the same, right? And that's how things move when we rub up against each other, right? I know I follow some people in Finland, and I am so surprised how close the accents are to Canadian and American. I follow a couple of people there. And if they didn't tell me that they were Finnish, I would have had no idea. I would have suspected that, I knew they were from Finland, right? But I would have been convinced that they were born in the United States or in Canada just because they sound so Canadian and so American. Like that accent is not very strong at all. Now, I don't know why, but it is um, the evolution of mankind that we become more and more consolidated into not consolidate integrated with each other. Diversity, right, in our own survival is so important. At one time there were like 15, 20 different human beings on the planet, and now all that's left is the Homo sapiens. And yes, we've got a little bit of Denisovans or Denisovans, however you want to pronounce it, and we have Neanderthals and maybe some archaic genes that we haven't pinpointed the distinct branch of that existence, but Cindy's trailing off side branches already. But the idea is, where does that diversity come from right now? Right? And if you really look at it and think about it, in the past 50 years, just in our country here, that we have become so enmeshed with the different cultures. Like we're marrying each other, we're having babies with each other. So the diversity is still within the Homo sapiens, but the diversity is coming from the different cultures now, not different human beings. We're all Homo sapiens, right? But it's coming from the different cultures, that we're mixing with the different cultures, and that's how we're keeping our diversity. Whereas before, it was in the mixtures of all these different human beings. Like it's right. It's important for us to move forward as a conglomerate. That wasn't the right word, but right, as a whole, as a species, right? But we do need that diversity. We really do. It's the way evolution has always worked, and if it doesn't continue that way, if we don't find ways to amalgamate and to assimilate with each other, right, then we're going to lose that diversity and maybe even lose that existence of human beings, right? Maybe we'll start all over as one-celled amoeba. Maybe it'll be the octopus or the whale, which happens to be next in line when it comes to intelligence, right? That they might be the next dominant species of the world. We're pretty dominant, aren't we? We are just everywheres. And we used to say, oh, we come from one little group in Africa, right? Maybe just 100 people, and we just expanded from that, right? But that's not true, and they're proving that now, right? That they're actually saying that we are actually coming from Eurasians, right? And I think that's pretty incredible. Okay, you guys. We are going to just pull a card tonight and just go into it for a few minutes. If you've never hung out with me, 54 powerful words. This is my deck here. And we just go into the word because we don't pay attention quite often, right? Of the things that come across our paths. And sometimes I believe if you just hold a thought, or it's like a car. I always use that analogy when I say that, because there was a time that I just really wanted a Jeep Rubicon. I just really wanted that truck, right? And I ended up seeing this truck absolutely everywhere. I had an opportunity to rent a Rubicon, a Jeep, for a couple of weeks on one of my camping trips, and I come to realize that possibly not because it didn't run good, not because I wasn't comfortable in it in the front seat, but because I want to set my vehicles up like RVs. There just was not enough foot room into setting up the back of it as a camping setup. So I came out of that idea, and then I said, well, you know what? That Bronco is looking pretty good. And the next thing you know, oh my goodness, I was seeing like 20 Broncos every single day. And it kind of took away the uniqueness, because I am a unique myself, and my vehicle, I'm going to set it up kind of unique, but I want to have a car with personality that fits me, and not a vehicle that has a personality that's meant to fit and does fit and is being used by everybody, right? So when I pull a card here, it's the same kind of idea, right? I pull a card, it's one powerful word, and the idea is just maybe for the next 24 hours, right? Pay attention how that word comes into your life, how that situation, the experiences, right, that comes into your life in reflection of that word, because we don't pay attention. And for any one of these words, they right, depending in the experiences that we're having, that it could come across our paths numerous times, but because we're so busy in what we're doing, that we just don't notice, right? We don't make those connections. So the idea is we pick a card and we just see how it fits into our day, our week, our life, right? And sometimes there's change in that. Sometimes there's just a moment of reflection. Sometimes there's just total revelation in that, right? And that revelation is where we get these ideas to, well, these creative ideas that possibly might impact us in a way that might take us down a different road. There's nothing wrong with going down different roads. You're going to know pretty soon if it's not the right road, but there will be experiences in that will offer up resources, tools, conversations, right? For us in those experiences. And you guys, I believe that it's because we are having so many experiences in our life that we find ourselves in this world of such busyness and distraction sometimes. So these help us not to be so distracted in that. Okay, you guys, let's get into the word. And I hope everybody is having a great week. I live here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We had a really nice couple of days, right? We actually went to +1 on one of those days. Now we're back. I think we're at like almost -20 right now. So we're going to go into another cold spell, but it's winter, right? And this is what we expect in winter. And it's a much more recognizable winter than what we've had in the past few years, because we've had a couple of, oh, more than a couple, I think it's 3 or 4 years now, that it has been a lot warmer, that very enjoyable. We love the change, right? We get hit pretty hard in winter, -40, -50 Celsius with the wind chills. But it is kind of like a little break when it does get warmer. It actually rained a little bit yesterday. It was rain, snow, but it still counts, right? And I went for a walk because it was so mild and it was a beautiful day, but the sidewalks were very slippery. So I was really worried because, I do live in a neighborhood with lots of seniors, right? Because of the different stores and uh, medical facilities, restaurants, that everything is accessible in this neighborhood, and it's a good place for seniors to be. But when that wet snow or that wet rain freezes on the ground, it can be quite dangerous. People wipe out all the time. I usually wipe out once or twice a year, right? And yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun. Okay, and on top of that, I dress for winter. I'm bundled up. I'm like the Pillsbury Doughboy in my snow outfits. I'm like that little kid from A Christmas Story, right? You can barely walk because I want to be comfortable. And I spend usually quite a bit of time outside. I haven't been spending as much time out there in the past month as I usually do. But, right, we're called to do other things sometimes. And sometimes it's in that just being aware of what each one of us needs in the moment, right? And then just giving ourselves that, treating ourselves like we matter, right? And that's sometimes hard because, right, we usually don't do that. Okay, you guys, let's just pick this card, go into it for a few minutes, and then we're just going to call it a night. And yeah, everything is done for me, right? I'm on top of things. So it's in that little bit of quietness, that little bit of ho hum, that I find myself kind of fluttering, right? So I do have to ground myself in projects, and I guess I'll go back into planning and making lists and stuff of how we're going to go about, right? Making this little reselling business kind of work for us. Okay, you guys, here we go again. Okay, I grabbed 3 cards, but I'm just going to take the top card because it is relevant. We have this word purpose today. I'm not quite sure if I've ever pulled this card. It's really neat because in this past week, I have been pulling cards that I I haven't pulled yet. And some of these cards I have pulled a dozen times, right? But this one here, purpose. Purpose is to keep moving forward. I should put is to just keep moving forward. Sometimes the heavy of our lives, right, keep us in place. Sometimes winter keeps us bound to the house, right? Sometimes we get depressed in what we do, and you just end up sitting and waiting for spring to arrive, making plans for the future rather than applying yourself in the moment. I'm a big believer in baby steps, right? When you I say, purpose is to just keep moving forward. It's not about going 100 miles an hour. It's not like grinding yourself to the ground. And if you're anything like me, right, it's in that busyness that we find challenge for ourselves, right? So again, if you do love grinding, if you do love applying yourself, then go ahead, because it's part of your makeup. It's part of what makes you feel good. But lots of us too, right? We we find ourselves stuck in the moment. We find ourselves giving up. And in the stall, that's when we can find ourselves going backwards. That's where we can find ourselves giving up. And that's the worst thing ever, is giving up on yourself. I am so grateful. I've been on YouTube now for 11 years, and I never gave up in that process, right? Was I always confident, and was I always um, proficient in what I was doing in bringing my content to the table? No, right? It was actually quite messy, ugly, scary, depressing, hard, frustrating, right? Lots of times. But it kept me going. And when you just keep going forward, right? You're not looking backwards. You're not you're not dwelling on things that might be. And I have to tell you, I have been guilty of that. You pay one bill, and already as soon as you paid that bill, you're going, oh my goodness, how am I going to pay next month? And you do that for like 30 days. And in the last month, things always work out. But sometimes we're our worst enemy of beating ourselves up. And in that, we can give ourselves, we can give up in that. We can throw our hands up on the air, and we can actually make a bad situation worse, because it is in that movement that we get closer to the things that we want, the things that we have to do, the things that we have to accomplish, the things that we would like to have come into our lives. But unless we're meeting it, and we're nothing saying that we have to meet it halfway, but in those baby steps, it's still moving towards it. And lots of times when you're moving towards something, right, something will come up behind you and go, oh my goodness, Cindy's going a little bit slow in there. Let's give her a little bit of a push. Let's give her a hand. And then we find ourselves moving again. Lots of times people think that they have to have a literal purpose in life. And that's not necessarily true, because life reveals itself, and in our choices, right, we get to find projects, we get to find adventures, right? We get to wander and learn and experience, right? And with that, we can get a little bit closer to each other and get a little bit closer to where we're supposed to be in being able, possibly even to have some diversity in our own lives because, right, we're just moving forward and we're picking up ideas and we're being curious and we're meeting up with others in the journey and we're having experiences in that. And sometimes that is keeping us preoccupied in what it could be, right? In those disasters that, if to left to our own demise, right, that we'll just delve into that and be our own worst enemies and sometimes, right, trip ourselves up and ruin the opportunity to make that little bit of movement, right? Just in that idea of never giving up. And if you're not giving up, it's just in those baby steps, just in those baby steps, so that the next experience, the next conversation, the next relationship, right? The next opportunity, right, can be revealed to us. Sometimes we just need an idea, just like I said today when me and my sister, we were talking about it and we decided to team up. We're going to go hard on Marketplace. This is how I pay for my trips. And if, right, if eBay doesn't want to make a little bit of money, and and it's not fair to me to say eBay because eBay is trying really hard, right? They're in that mix of having to follow directives too, and they didn't have much of a say when it came to the tariffs and stuff. But right, without that adaptability, without that moving forward, right, even if it's in baby steps, there is no resolution, right, for the hiccups and the problems that arise, right? Because, well, we're not moving, we're sitting in our haunches, and if we're sitting on our haunches, right, things are still moving without us, and if they're moving without us, guess who's at the back of the line, right? Okay, purpose is to just keep moving forward. I'm going to put just is to, I should have start with, yeah, because it's just in moving forward, in doing the baby steps, in moving along with what's being unveiled in whatever moment. And lots of times we don't know what the next moment's going to entail. But if you're not doing anything, you're going to be worrying about it. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. And we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you guys for coming into my live.